Hello, hello. Thank you for joining us. I am here with Michelle Berg, an expert in everything in HR, and we will be talking about recruitment and selection.
You want to do it again?
Nope. Thanks, Michelle, for joining us. You and I first met when you were a guest speaker for one of my classes, and you have always been one of the favorites for the students. So when I was thinking about recording these interviews, you were the first one I thought of. So thank you very much for joining us. For those that don't know you, can you just tell us a little bit about yourself, how you got into HR, and all of that good stuff?
Yeah, sure. So I got my way into human resources kind of like everyone that I've met anyways with my journey is I stumbled upon it. I was working with children with autism back in the day and found myself in a precarious situation where I ended up helping to support a lot of the recruitment for other therapists, performance management, and so on and so forth, and didn't really have an education with it in the beginning. From there, I did what everyone does after they finish university, it seems like, and I went to Korea. I think that's where we bonded initially, and thought I was going to be a teacher, but was thrown almost right away into being an HR manager for the school that I was at. So the way I always position it is I was recruiting unsuspecting foreigners to come and live in Korea. But unfortunately also had had to fire right away too. That was part of my role. When I came back to Canada, landed an administration role, decided I kind of got these great opportunities, but I really hadn't worked myself to the point where I needed to yet. So started in an administration role and was 3 months in and promoted to director. Again, that's not normal, but happened to be best place at the right time, I guess. And then from there, kind of spiraled into Calgary, thought we were going to follow the oil and gas dream, and didn't end up in oil and gas at all. But by 2010, I felt like my journey was done on the internal side. I didn't feel that I was affecting enough HR policies the way that I thought I could. And I thought that I needed to do more, specifically for the smaller size businesses. There really, in 2010, there wasn't much for small businesses to have the HR support that they needed. So I started a company called Elevated. And so this is actually this month today, in fact, is our 8-year anniversary at Elevated. And through that, we've probably supported, I would say 250 small companies. We're close to 5,000 employees that we've touched, and whether it's recruiting, or building their programs internally, we've really morphed recently into what I would call the employee experience side, where we're building programming that strong cultures. But we still touch the entire gamut of what HR would look like. So hiring, performance management, compensation, all the way into terminations. And so that's kind of right now we've got 8 employees at Elevated, and we are continuously looking for new people to join us that are looking to do HR in a different way.
So all of them are generalists, or do you have some specialists?
Yeah, we are one of the few outsourcing companies, I would say, that I would consider all generalists for sure. They have to kind of touch everything because we get the most random questions from clients, specifically when we're dealing with smaller and medium-sized businesses that aren't exposed to as much HR. They have to be real quick on their toes. So a little bit of everything is definitely needed. And we've just hired someone who will be starting September 4th, who really actually specializes in design thinking, because that's the approach that we're going to take to the employee experience side.
And I think that was a 2015 HR trend as more and more companies are doing design thinking. So we're going to focus on recruitment and selection, specifically your current way that you look for HR generalists. So how do you look if you are, just walk us through the big picture, and we're going to sort of go step by step through the pre-screening, the job ad, and everything like that. But just give us a general overview that you are now looking for a generalist. How would the recruitment process look, sort of from start to finish?
Sure. I would say that we are probably the least amount of process oriented when it comes to it. I don't think that I've recruited the same way in any particular case. That's not necessarily always what I recommend, but sometimes I do say the coach is not the best hockey player on the team. But I will say in general, what we've really spent our time on is we don't want to spend a ton of time on the ad process. What we want to do is build relationships with different practitioners throughout the industry, and without really interviewing, meeting people and networking with people and getting a sense of that vibe, and then seeing if there's a mutual fit from there and calling them at that point to say, hey, let's now put you through the process. At that point, what's really important to me is the culture. So every single person that does join our team meets every single person on our team before we do a really in-depth interview. Then what we do is we go into what I call a values interview, and it can last anywhere from 2 to 4 hours long. The reason why we do that, and we can dig into that a little bit more as well, but I really want to see stamina. That's something that's important, to see if the continual answers remain the same. I also don't believe in getting married after a 30-minute interview either. So we do try to get as vulnerable and as deep as we possibly can, especially because we're a small firm. That becomes even more important. I need to get to know you the most. Then we typically do a dinner or a lunch where we get to know you in a more personal setting as well. In our last one that we just did, we also invited the spouses along with that, just because, again, you're not, when you're joining a small organization like ours, you're not just giving yourself, you're giving every part of yourself. So we wanted to see how the spouses also not interacted with each other, but the vibe that they got with our working relationship, that was super important as well. And then references, we fully believe in, so we do put all of the energy into that, but we don't always go with the face value references that we're given either. When we're told a story, we're always asking for who can tell us that same story. Because again, for me, as much as I get it, you're selling yourself, fabrication of certain situations is not something that I'm interested in. So that's a very brief overview of what we look for.
So when you were talking about references, when somebody says, I brought in $500,000 worth of new clients, your question is then, who can I talk to verify that you brought in $500,000 worth of clients?
Sure, we could go to that level for sure. I'd be looking for that, but I actually get a bit more granular. So usually we ask a question about team and what's the best project that you've done as a team and where you were most successful. I'll ask for someone who did that exact project and want to speak to that person to make sure that that story was the same, that what they put in or the effort that they put in, that they said that they did, because everyone's got a good team story.
Right.
I want to see if that's matching in the reference.
Okay. Now, every single course or textbook tells you how to have a specific process, and that having some kind of process is much better than none. The problem is companies have finite time and finite resources, and a lot of people don't want to do a 4-hour interview, or a lot of people don't, they're just like, hire me. I don't want to fill out this questionnaire. I don't want to do these pre-screening questions. I don't want to do a YouTube video.
Right.
So if time and resources and the candidate's attitude weren't a factor, and you could create your ideal recruitment selection process, what would be some of the elements that are sort of missing from your current process?
Missing from my current process. I mean, I can actually speak to that in two different ways. I mean, when we get, it's exactly as the time, there is an assignment that we have added. In this last one, we said no cover letters, but we did want a YouTube video right out of the gate. So again, time became a factor at the end because you're watching a ton of YouTube videos. So there is that. I think it is, I would love to do more of a working interview, 2 to 3 days before really jumping in. If I could do that, I think I would feel a lot more secure. But the truth is, we put so much time and energy into our recruiting process because we've actually made the decision internally. We're never going to be in a position to fire anyone. So when I have to ask myself, if I could never fire this person, do I still want to take this risk on this person? The only way that I know to do that is by adding more time and more assignments or more curriculum or more meetings, because it's got to fit every single part of my gut, knowing that I won't be in a position to let them go. Now, let me say this, that doesn't mean that people don't leave us. They certainly do, but that's because we spend then more time on the coaching process and it becomes more of a mutual decision. I've been through 5,000 terminations, and I know that's not what we're talking about, but I just don't ever want to be in a position where I'm blindsiding someone. And that's really what I've learned over my career. So because of that, it is just having more time that the candidate can give me to really see who they are. That would be my ideal, and that's what's missing.
Yeah, everyone wants more time. You mentioned earlier that you don't, not that you don't believe in job ads, but you don't use job ads. You use more networking strategies to reach out to people rather than posting job ads. So tell me a little bit about the job ad itself. Do you post it, or do you really just look for internal networking opportunities to reach out?
So we have posted, I will say that, but we've actually spent a huge amount of time in our branding and our marketing on our employee, what it looks like to work at Elevated. So that's from a marketing perspective. We just found that our clients really weren't looking at us at all on Instagram or Twitter or LinkedIn for that matter. But who was looking at us were future prospects. So when we realized that we would get, and we still have a stack of resumes of people that want to come work for us, we believe that we really spent that time building that brand out. That was our number one thing. So we are constant, what I would say is we are everyday recruiting. We're telling you, if you go to our Instagram site now, you'll see almost every week what a perk of working at Elevated is, or what it looks like, or if a client gives us a kudos, we really celebrate that, not from a testimonial perspective, but how fun it is to work with us. So that's where we've invested a lot of our time. So technically we have a job ad up all the time, right? That's how I see it anyways. But when we are looking for something specific, and we were probably about a year and a half ago, we were looking for something specific. That was the last time we really posted something. We don't do the generic ad. We are looking for someone a little bit unique and a little bit different, so our ad has to reflect that. And then when we ask for certain things, such as a video, we expect that as well. So we'll put that in the ad. But we're certainly funnier. That's because that's what we're trying to attract. We're not trying to attract a stereotypical person in HR, someone who is very process driven. That doesn't work well in our culture. So the things that we try to make sure are in the job ad are reflective of the culture that we're trying to create in the organization.
Okay. So you post on social media, and a lot of people don't understand that Instagram is meant for people to be able to spy on you. A lot of people think that they're supposed to put a picture job ad on there, but what it really is allowing the candidate to sort of creep on you from time to time and see what's going on in your organization. Other than posting on social media, what websites do you typically, for your clients and yourself, would post in? I'm going to throw in Indeed, other than Indeed.
Well, so depending on the position, I would definitely say anything professional certainly hits LinkedIn. Although the costs of LinkedIn have gone up exponentially. It's a lot of clickbait right now, and what used to, like a year ago, I think it was a $330 ad, can now, if you're not watching, cost up to $1,000. So, but I still use it. I get a lot of great traction there. and again, specifically for the types of roles that we're looking for, the more professional level, certainly there. I don't think I would post for a mechanic there, for example. And then, so that really takes me to another side. If I'm looking for someone a little bit more blue collar, I've actually, once again, it used to be really great before Indeed was Kijiji. I'm seeing another new trend forward, specifically again for blue collar. Kijiji is starting to work. Again, it costs more than it used to. They used to be free, but nothing good is free. So just remember that usually. And then we'll get specific still in terms of industry specific. If it's an accountant that we're looking for, we'll use their industry. They've got job boards that they can use. But I will be honest, there's going to have to be something. The trend that I'm seeing is we're going to have to be able to break through somehow and totally disrupt the whole job posting process, because it's so diluted at this point that I think the best thing is word of mouth, getting it out there, getting your colleagues and friends out there to get the ad out for you. And it's not traditional social media. It's just taking networking to a whole new level.
Yeah. And I've seen on LinkedIn now, it's starting to become more and more trendy where recruiters and people are, instead of YouTube video cover letters, they're doing YouTube job postings. So they will record themselves and just describing the role and the individual. What do you think about that trend?
We've just started doing it as well. Okay. So we're certainly jumping on the bandwagon for our clients anyways. The key to that is short, fast. But I think at the end of the day, people's attention span is so short that you've got to do whatever it is to attract the right candidate, be different and set yourself apart from the competition, which still, for the best talent and for the top talent, there is still massive competition. There always will be, regardless if you're in a down economy or not.
And I completely understand your strategy about meeting the people multiple times and within your network before really even sitting down and having a conversation with them. But eventually, you're going to be screening resumes at some point or other. What are your sort of tips, or what's your screening method for looking at resumes?
So the good old-fashioned eyeball way is what we use. But the big thing that I would say to anyone that is applying to us specifically, or any of our clients for that matter, is that you have 7 seconds to impress. And I get really hung up on the fact that most candidates still do not recognize that a resume is a marketing brochure for themselves. So when it looks bad, I'm immediately turned off, and you don't have a bunch more time past that. If you don't tell me what qualifications you have in that initial space where I can just go, should I look at this person a little bit more? You've got to do something to entice me. I'm certainly looking if they still go old school and use an objective and they don't have the objective of getting a job within my organization, but some sort of generic organization. I'm also totally, you're pretty much done for me. So read my job ad or read information about the organization and make sure you're incorporating that into a resume. I am still looking for hunger in a candidate on that resume.
Right. A lot of people don't realize that when you've seen 10,000, 15,000 resumes, you're pretty good at spotting cut and paste resume versus an individual who's actually taken the time to customize their resume. So that makes an impact on you.
Yeah, 100%.
Do you have any kind of ranking or scoring method when you're going through the resume?
I would say that, yes. So initially when I'm going through the resume, I am just first looking for that initial, passes the sniff test. They go into this pile and the other pile goes into the absolutely not. But I'm not spending a ton of time at that point. There's no ranking there. That next step of when I'm really doing the deep dive into the resume, that's certainly when I start to create my own ranking. If I'm looking for 3 top things, I will just make sure which ones have the 3 top things, and they get to go into that next pile. So I won't say it is. I won't say it's a huge process, but it certainly allows me and encourage. We all do this, and I get the whole team to be involved too. Is just to make sure that we're all on the same page with who we would put forward. But I have a slight bias. As much as I'm saying all this, like, you've got to show me the energy and you've got to show me all these things in resumes, I hate resumes. That's the other side of it. So often I will even just go look at somebody's LinkedIn profile, if I'm even at all interested, to see if it grabs me there. And again, if you're looking to apply it somewhere like Elevated, I invest far more time in how well written that cover letter is, or whatever assignment we ask you to do in the job ad. I'll spend more time there ranking that than your resume. My best hire to date did not have the qualifications on paper for the job, but her, what I call, give a shit factor was so over the top, I couldn't refuse not to interview her. And that it's since still exists in the organization today. And she's almost been with us for a year. And I've never once been disappointed by anything that she has put forward, because I saw that in her initial cover letter.
Right. So just take me back. So if she didn't have the qualifications on the resume, what made her land the interview? Like, did she reach out to you after the fact, or?
Nope. She put together the best assignment. So in the job ad, we asked for an assignment. She put together the best assignment that anyone had ever put together.
Okay, so that leads to the next question. That's a good segue. What kind of testing or pre-test or job assignments or kind of things do you do to a candidate to sort of see what kind of competencies they have?
So again, where I am trying to practice what I preach is we are so culturally, not culturally diverse. We are actually, which is kind of odd, but culture is so important to our organization. So initially what I'm really trying to do is just understand the values and the value set and the type of energy that they're going to put into responding to whatever it is. So I will ask a values question, whether it is, sometimes we do it over the phone. It just depends how many candidates that we're trying to get through. But we'll say, how do you respond to our values? But we won't tell them what our values are. They're very blatant on our website. We write blogs about it. We put it in all of our employment branding materials. So technically what I'm testing is whether or not they're as invested in us as they would like us to be in them. And so that, for us, is a test. It's not a traditional test, but again, we're really testing how much effort are they going to put in. That's number one. Then the next one I often will do, here are three, specifically for the generalists, I will say, here are three of our latest crazy questions that we've gotten from clients. How do you respond to this? And I do it from an email perspective, because a lot of our interactions with clients are over email, and I want to see how they would respond to a client if they were my client, for example, or if I was their client. How would they respond to me, and how confident do they sound in their answer, and what kind of confidence would I get? It may not be the same way that I would respond, but I am looking for that consultative approach. And then, because technology is a big part of what we're doing, and we're always trying to push kind of the boundaries of what it is that we do, I will sometimes ask again to put together a YouTube video. I don't care if the editing is perfect or not, but I want to know that they are willing to put themselves out there. And again, because most of our generalists do need to be in front of an audience, they can't be scared to put together a YouTube video about what they look like or how they come across, because at the end of the day, that's pretty much their job single day. So to me, it's a requirement.
Absolutely. So you did touch on this a little bit, that you formulate your questions based on your values for your organization. Can you, let's do it differently. So if you formulate your questions based on your values, can you give me some examples of what kind of questions those would be?
Sure. So the big thing for us in our organization is the willingness, because I said again that we don't fire people, we have to, the willingness to give and receive feedback is probably the key to success in our organization. So not only just to hear it, but to also be able to give it back when they're feeling uncomfortable. So I typically say that and I'll give you an example of a question, but where we usually start off with is how vulnerable and how genuine can they get in their responses back. However, what I will say is, and then also have enough of a filter that they don't need to tell me every single thing part of their life. And I know that that seems like such almost the opposite.
Contradictory.
So contradictory. I get that. But there is this fine line of really getting to know someone and knowing what your weaknesses are without scaring someone across the table that these are your weaknesses. So a lot of our questions actually came from the resource that I use is called the book Who by Jeff Smart. And he really is the one, or that whole author, they've put together quite an amazing list of questions that really get to the gist of vulnerability. But for example, again, ownership is one of our values. So one of the questions would be, what was your biggest failure and what did you learn and how did you respond to it? I will ask that question. One of the things you'll notice though from us is we don't ask what would you do questions. We typically always ask for an example. I don't necessarily call them, what did they used to call them, all of the behavioral?
Yeah, behavioral.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose they are, but I'm not looking for a perfect answer back. I'm looking for a genuine answer back. So it doesn't need to follow a formula at all, but I am looking for that example in terms of what is that question. So like I say, if you failed, it's okay to fail. How did you fail? And where was that ownership piece? What I'm looking for in that answer is, are you blaming anyone else? Because blame and the victim card doesn't work in our organization at all. My favorite part, though, and maybe you're going to get into this a little bit later, I know in your own questions, but what we'll do is we'll get to about the halfway mark in the interview process, and then I'll ask them if they're ready for some feedback on how well the interview is going. And I will typically give them feedback on what we've liked and what we haven't liked. And I'm doing that from the perspective to see how they respond to feedback. And it is so often that we literally watch the body language just slump if they aren't very good at taking feedback, or they start to get defensive. And so my favorite part is, again, watching those that rise up and go, I totally hear you. And then for the next 40, hour to hour and a half that we're spending in that interview, is they're taking that feedback and continuing to thread it through their answers. To me, that really shows someone if they're going to be willing to move on and be with our organization, because you can't dwell on the stuff that you did wrong. You have to take it and move forward. So that's kind of, I guess, I hope that answers your question.
It does. So you did answer that question of what's sort of your favorite questions. Do you have any other ones, or that's your sort of favorite thing of giving feedback in the middle of an interview and then seeing their reaction, or do you have anything else up your sleeve?
Yeah, I mean, I think at the end of the day, I also ask, what's one of the questions you want to do over? And if they feel very confident in how they've done, and maybe they haven't done that well for me, that's really a really good signal for me that they maybe don't have the same self-awareness that I would want them to have for the interview. On the flip side, when they are, they kind of can laugh at themselves, and there's some self-deprecating humor that comes out. I really like that when they go, you know what, I think I really bombed this one. I'm not sure if I would be able to answer it differently, mind you, but I bombed it. I like that too, because again, that's showing that they have a willingness to be genuine. And then I ask them to give us feedback on how they think the interview went and how good we are. And if they struggle at giving us feedback, they're going to struggle in that client interaction, because that's all we do. The other value that we have is partnership. And that means we're not order takers. We don't cower to the client. Instead, we give real advice when we think that maybe things aren't working so well. And that's all in the feedback loop. So again, I like asking that question too.
No, and you've touched upon this, that you, when you're interviewing a candidate, some good signs are that they give a shit, and that they're able to take and give feedback well. Any other good signs that during an interview that you make a mental note of, this is a good candidate?
Yeah, body language is something that I spend a lot of time reading. And then on the flip side, I'm also asking if they can read our body language. So when the answers dwell on and on and on, I would hope that they would start to see that we probably are okay for an answer, or at least do the check-in. So just say, I could elaborate more. Do you need more than that? I like when a candidate has enough self-awareness to ask that question. Because again, just because you're chatty and you talk a lot doesn't mean that you're right for the role either. On the flip side, I don't like just the one or two answer questions either. You got to give me more of you in the interview. And so if I'm constantly saying, tell me more about that, that should be a hint for you to say, I am looking for more from you on the go forward. Yeah, so I mean, those are signs. First impression is everything. And that's another, actually going back to the question, I like to ask, what kind of first impression do you make? And if they don't really know what their first impression is, if they've never really spent any time self-reflecting on themselves or getting feedback from other people, and come up with a first impression that is completely not who they are, again, that's a flag for me, because I am looking for someone who is really confident in who they are and can answer those questions. And I find with a lot of candidates that we're meeting, there is such little self-awareness these days. And that's the piece, that if you're applying for a job, spend time there on yourself, really get to know yourself well before going into an interview.
So lack of self-awareness was a flag for you. Any other typical red flags for you for a candidate?
Overselling themselves. I say that I'm listening for a lot more I's than we's. On the flip side, I'm also listening for, if all you did is we, then there really isn't anything on I. So a good balance is, I guess, what I'm looking for. My major flag, where I'm pretty much done with every candidate, is how they speak about their past manager. I know that that's not that's not rocket science, that every website talks about that, but I'll tell you, there are so many people that speak so negatively about their past organizations. And then I guess the other big one is if they've been completely unhappy at their previous organization, I usually ask, so take me through the steps of what you did to try and fix that there before just giving up. Again, because ownership and the victim card is something that I'm looking for. If they didn't really say anything or do anything, and if they couldn't demonstrate what they've done, they're not going to be a fit for us, because it's very autonomous in our organization. You've got to figure out your path to happiness most of the times with us, but take ownership again. So that's where, if they really haven't done the work, but they think that they deserve everything on their side, well, look at my experience. They should just be coming to us. No, that's not how the real world works. I want to see what you've done to create opportunities for yourself. And then I get it. Sometimes you're just at the end of the road. As long as there was a path to get there, though, that's what I'm looking for.
Okay. And you've done your interviews. How do you choose just one person?
Well, I mean, for us, again, small organization, most of the time I look for consensus, and I mean 100% consensus. That's not realistic as we continue to grow. I get that. I think, though, I will say is that for those that we have hired and those that I haven't been as successful, because just because I am in HR doesn't mean I've been 100% successful in all of my hires either. I can always tell you, we did not spend the time with the person, or I didn't listen to my gut in that one instance. I felt
the
book
that says never listen to your gut.
I know.
But everyone does, right?
Yeah. And you know what? We all do it too. I mean, the biggest failure is when you're desperate and you need someone and you just go, yep, that's the person. But every single time there was that flag there, that when it hasn't worked out. Then on the flip side, though, I mean, I really like, because we do include the whole group, watching them with the whole group and seeing that. And again, the one with the biggest give a shit factor, the one that follows up with me, the one that wants to make sure that they stand out, those are the ones that usually get more of attention from me, and I feel better about making that decision too.
Absolutely. You are one of the few people that I know that also uses a lot of tools and technology, or at least tries different things. So, what are some of the things that you're doing right now, trying to be more efficient with technology or any kind of online tools or tools in general?
In terms of the recruiting
Yeah.
process? Yeah. Um, so, I mean, we have an applicant tracking system right now. I wouldn't say it's the best of the best by any stretch. I would actually say that the recruitment side for me, um, I this is actually probably where, thank you for that compliment that I use technology. I use it for almost every other part of my business.
Yeah.
I'll tell you that because it's so humanized and that person means so much, I'm really struggling with realistically having technology make that decision for me. We even recruit for our clients, and yet my advice would be I would never give recruiting away. I'd give all the pre-up to stuff away, but I would never give that decision away because it's such an honestly, it's an intimate decision. This is your organization. And so many leaders do think anyone can hire, or anyone will do, or here's my list of qualifications, find someone that fits that and you'll be fine. And I disagree on that side. But what we do use, I guess, is a little bit old school and probably traditional, is we're big into the DISC profiling. Now, I don't use DISC as part of the interview process, but I certainly use it to be aware of what are some of the things that I need to do in terms of motivation, communication, strengths, things like that. And I am kind of watching as to where do they fit in the whole team, and who would they work best with in terms of the team. I will say that, and we do it pre-hire, but I've never used it as, okay, we're not going to hire this person because of that. It's more so, these are the flags now that I need to be aware of if I am going to move forward with them, or here are the strengths that I could totally use them for on the go forward too. But yeah, I would say technology is not my forte on the recruitment side.
No, and it's rare these days because people do get get a lot of resumes, so they're trying to use technology in order to at least not get help when they have 400 resumes to go through.
And like I say, I mean, the very basics, like in our applicant tracking system, we've got the pre-screening questions, or does it have, certain things. But again, because resumes are still done so terribly, and because we aren't always just looking at a resume, we're looking for different things, applicant tracking systems can actually take a lot of that stuff on. So because we're looking for someone a little bit different, I also have to be prepared that I'm going to be screening the good old-fashioned way more than I could be. I'd hate to miss someone really good because technology decided to screen them out.
Right. And so you do the DISC, as I am definitely hiring this person. And one of the last areas is that you want to do a DISC so that once you hire that individual, you at least know the strengths, the weaknesses, and how to better manage that person.
Yeah, I'll even use it in terms of what's required in the orientation. So we have a general orientation program that we've created, for sure. But how I build the orientation is based on what their communication preferences are. So if someone likes to think things through, ask more questions, and really like to see a process, I'll make sure that I build that out and spend more time in that area. But if I'm hiring someone who kind of likes to just be thrown in, collaborate, meet as many people as possible, I'll jam pack their schedule in the orientation with that opportunity, so they get inundated the way that they prefer to. So I create different experiences, if you will, in the orientation program based on what their DISC is.
Okay. So once you hire that individual, you have a personalized orientation for that individual. Is there a sort of a generic template that you start off with? What does your orientation look like?
Yeah, so I mean, the big things that we do in particular is we're going to give them, even prior to, we believe orientation starts before their first day. So we've developed the ins and outs of Elevated, which is not a policy or a handbook by any stretch. It is the ins and outs. It's all the stupid little stuff that probably has driven me crazy over the years, and the team has taken it upon themselves to build this book of the ins and outs, from finances to everything. But they get that in advance. They also get the handbook, which is completely unique, but it's more of a culture story book beforehand. They'll get that. Then I will send them about a week out. I will send them what their first week schedule is going to look like, in terms of who they're going to be meeting, what's the opportunities that they're going to be spending with me, what maybe kind of activities are up for that week. We do a lot of volunteering. We do a lot of our own marketing and videos. So I just want to prepare them for that as well. And then from there, day one, then we kind of set out they know exactly what their accountabilities and expectations look like for the first, even though it's 90 days, because I think that's the generic term everyone uses. We really look at it month one. What are the expectations? And then we create another one in month two and move forward. We meet, every single person is met with on a monthly basis, and there's 3 questions that they have to fill out. What were they recognized for? What area do they need to work on? And what are they going to do to work on that area? And they have to take, again, it's totally autonomous, they have to do it themselves. It's not coming from me as the leader, it's coming from them. And then I add input into there, but they track it on a monthly basis. And so really the orientation after month 1 just starts to fall into that as well. What's missing for them? But in terms of understanding the organization and how that works, those are the big things that we are certainly push almost immediately, because that's what's going to lead to success.
And those 3 questions, are they done online or on a piece of paper that's just filed?
No, so we used to use something called 15-5. It's an awesome technology for sure. And it's a great way from an engagement tool. And those questions were in that. But what I really found was missing was that human touch. So we'd ask them those questions. It would get put into this great little online system, and then I could respond to it. But again, because leadership is really about a human connection, what we do now is we've gone away again from the technology. They've got the template in front of them, but it is about a face-to-face meeting. And then they, as the employee, are filling it out and they're keeping control of it. It's not driven by me as the leader or the manager.
Smart. Do you see other, we touched a little bit about the YouTube video cover letters and the job ads. Do you see any other trends developing in in recruitment selection that you're sort of noticing or keeping an eye on, or just going, that's interesting?
Well, yeah. So for me, because we completely are awful at this as well, and certainly we need to get better at it for our clients, but is the actual candidate experience. So not so much for us, but remembering that anyone that applies to us or one of our clients could be a future client down the road. And so how you treat the candidate to me is the number one thing that we're still forgetting, and closing the loop. It's such an easy, small thing. Our technology even does it for us. And yet I still find that in most organizations, and the feedback that we get from candidates is that you didn't tell us what was going on. We tend to be a little cheeky in our responses when we do send it out, and we get some feedback back even on that. But again, it's everything that we do is related to the experience that if you work with us, this is how we are. I mean, that fits our value set again. So I think how the candidates are treated is the number one trend that people are talking about, because that could turn into a client. I think we forget so often as a professional. On the other side, what I would say that I'm exploring right now is I'm really trying to create a trend around giving the candidate on the other side of the table more feedback when they didn't get the role. Specifically, if they've gone down the path, they've done more than, say, just send a resume in. They've been through that path. I still find because again, time is of the issue or of the essence, we're not doing a good enough job of giving feedback back to candidates. However, I think though, because we've tried it a lot, the reason why a lot of companies don't is because the candidates are horrible at receiving the feedback. And we have just been, I've just been amazed at, because every time a candidate will email us and say, well, can you tell us why we weren't selected? And so I do. I tell them, because that's, again, part of my value set. And how bad they are at the feedback. It really does make me not want to give any other feedback ever again. So I do hope, though, that maybe we can get more people on the same trend and get candidates to hear that if you really want to get better at the interview process, be prepared to listen then. But I know clients that are scared to give feedback because they think that they're going to go sue you down the road if it's for something. And I think it's ridiculous, but that's where I would hope. That is my hope, maybe 5 years down the road, that we're talking more and more about how to give proper candidate feedback back, and that candidates are finally listening to it and taking it.
One of the things when I get negative feedback from feedback is it's a confirmation that we made the right choice with that individual. So it's always a sort of good feeling that you read it, you go, but it's like, okay, well, thanks for confirming that we made the right choice about not choosing you. Anything else that you want to sort of give as a general tip or overview that we haven't really covered here that you just want to share with the viewers about sort of recruitment selection in general that I might have not touched upon?
No, Adam, you always do a fabulous job of really digging deep and asking some good, solid questions. I know at the end of the day that most of the people that are in your courses are going to be looking for jobs, and you've sent a few candidates to me as well, or potential candidates for me to take a look at their resumes. And it's the same thing over and over again. I don't see a give a shit factor at all in the resumes. And those that are really struggling and trying to find their way in, you got to start at the bottom. So if for some of you, I think your students that are in HR right now, that are maybe doing a career change, be prepared for working yourself up all the way there. It might not be as fast or as slow, but you can't just go from laterally into HR, I find anyways. You've got to earn your stripes up there. That would be my biggest advice. And so be prepared to do that too. But make sure that if you are in HR, you have the best resume out of anyone else. That's got to be the key. It is your marketing brochure. Don't ever forget that. And it's when I get super disappointed is when I see HR resumes being amongst some of the poorer resumes that I see.
Absolutely. Like you said, the coaches aren't the best players sometimes, and I agree with you. I'm shocked sometimes when I look at HR students' resumes, and it's just not up to par of what, after taking all the courses and specifically recruitment selection, it's just they still do that general resume, and it's good enough. So do you want to plug anything else before we say our goodbyes?
Yeah, I would love, we've had very successful internships, so I'd make sure that you would always, that you keep kind of elevated HR top of mind for some of those internships. We just had an amazing one. Her time actually just ended on Friday, but we've extended a full-time offer to her as well. So she really came in and showed us everything. And don't be afraid just because we don't have something posted. If we seem like an organization that you'd like to work for, let us know who you are. I'm always curious to know. I want to learn about who's up and coming. Part of the reason why I created Elevated in the first place was to change some of the practices within HR. So if you want to do things a little bit more disruptive, do that. Speaking of disruption, I also am one of the, I guess, we co-run Disrupt HR here in Calgary. There's 3 of us. Our next one will be, I believe, in October. So stay tuned for that. Go to Disrupt HR Calgary chapter. Adam's been a phenomenal speaker a few times, and there's been some times where we've been off camera doing some stuff. So come to that. Be prepared to learn, network there. And then there's something else coming to Calgary, but based on when you're showing this, Social HR is also coming. We're also a sponsor of that down the road. So yeah, just get involved in the HR community doesn't always mean necessarily the HRA, but be part of the HRA. And I will never say not to. But there are lots of other groups that are out there that want to look at HR and be bold and different and really make an influence and an impact. I think that's why most of us go into HR. It's not always easy to do, but we got to keep the conversations going.
Perfect. So I will put those links in the show notes below the video. And so what I'm going to do right now is I am just going to move over to the title intro and say goodbye, but don't hang up on me, okay?
Okay.
All right. So thank you so much for sharing 50 minutes of your time and giving everyone some great tips. We'll see you soon.
Thank you.